an original MCM production.
Welcome to our program. I'm Jaime Alvarado, co-chair of Rid Racism Milwaukee. Pat Kadich is our other co-chair. And we're happy to have Expo, which is ex-prisoners organized here to talk about closing MSDF. While they're getting ready, I'd like to talk a little bit about Rid Racism Milwaukee. We've been around for a couple of years now. Our mission is to dismantle racism through dialogue, education, and action. And events like this is what we wish to present more. We also have book clubs. Last year we had a book club, or 2 years ago, of the New Jim Crow. And in August we're going to do one on the Third Revolution, William Barber, Moral Movement. I don't have the title right, but Third Reconstruction, please. Thank you. And anybody interested, please look at our website. We're going to have a sign-up sheets there. So I'm going to introduce Mark Rice. He's the Assistant State Director of Expo. And we have 3 panels he's going to introduce. And go ahead, Mark.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Rice. As Jaime said, I'm the Assistant State Director of Expo, Wisconsin. Expo is Ex-Prisoners Organizing. Expo is a group of formerly incarcerated people who are working to end mass incarceration in Wisconsin. We're a project of Wisdom. Wisdom is a network of faith-based organizations in Wisconsin that work on social justice issues. In 2011, Wisdom launched a campaign called the 11 by 15 campaign. The 11 by 15 campaign aimed to cut Wisconsin's prison population in half to 11,000 by the end of 2015. Unfortunately, we did not reach our goal, but we're continuing on now as the Rock Wisconsin campaign. It's ROC Wisconsin. ROC stands for Restoring Our Communities. Expo helps to lead the Rock Wisconsin campaign. Expo emerged in 2014. And so tonight, we're here to talk about Milwaukee Secure Detention Facility. And all of the panelists have been incarcerated in Milwaukee Secure Detention Facility. It's commonly known as MSDF. Unfortunately, Yolanda Perkins, Shirley Moffett, and Dante Pyro could not make it tonight. Shirley and Yolanda are both sick, not feeling well, not able. Dante Pyro could not make it because of a decision of his probation agent, but his brother is here to take his place and to explain a bit about the situation. Dante Pyro just recently got out of MSDF, and he's going to talk about his story and his experience with MSDF. Alan Schultz also, he's been So Expo Wisconsin State Board member. He's been a key leader with the Close MSDF campaign. And Expo now has a committee that's been working just on this issue. We have monthly meetings, meet 2 times a month. Our general membership meeting is the first Tuesday of each month at 6 p.m. at the Project Return office. And that's at the Milwaukee Enterprise Center, 2821 North 4th Street, room 312. The office is going to be moving. But those meetings, like I said, it's first Tuesday of each month at 6 p.m. at the Project Return office. And then the Close MSDF committee meets the 3rd Tuesday of each month at 6 p.m. at the Project Return office. So please come out and get involved with that. But right now, we're gonna start off, we'll get to the panel later, but I'm just gonna start off with the PowerPoint presentation about explaining the situation, MSDF, and what it is and why we believe it should be closed down. My own situation, I'll start just by sharing briefly my own story. The Wisconsin State Department of Corrections forced me to spend 6 months in Milwaukee Secure Detention Facility in 2007 for allegedly violating a rule of supervision that did not involve a new crime. the Milwaukee police officers arrested me for disorderly conduct. I went to court a few days later because I was on probation. So what happened was I went to court. The judge, the public defender, and the prosecutor all agreed that my behavior did not fit with the definition of disorderly conduct. The judge dismissed the case, but then my probation agent in Milwaukee decided to move forward with the revocation process. And while I fought the revocation, that's when I spent the 6 months in Milwaukee Secure Detention Facility. And so MSDF, many people there are there only because of minor rule violations. Many of the people there have not even been charged with new crimes. MSDF is a high-rise prison in downtown Milwaukee. It's on 10th and State. Many people drive by it every day and do not even know what it is. It looks like just another office building downtown. But in reality, it's a torture chamber. It's a place where the conditions there are very inhumane. And MSDF was built in 2001, and the history, just a brief history. So crimeless revocation is a major problem in Wisconsin, and crimeless revocation occurs when the Department of Corrections reincarcerates a person on probation, parole, or extended supervision for violating a rule of supervision that does not involve a new crime. We're talking about minor infractions like unauthorized computer or cell phone use, crossing county lines, failing alcohol tests, missing appointments. So that's a crimeless revocation. So we know in 2015, Wisconsin incarcerated 3,000 individuals for crimeless revocations in the state prison system. And people were there for an average of 18 months. So now, currently, there are at least 4,500 people in the Wisconsin state prison system for crimeless revocations. It's coming up on a later slide, and that's more than the combined capacity of MSDF and the state's two largest prisons. So just by ending the practice of crimeless revocation, Wisconsin could close down MSDF and the state's two largest prisons. DOC forces thousands of other people to spend shorter amounts of time in MSDF and in county jails for probation, parole, and extended supervision holds. So individuals are being held and then eventually get released, so they're not revocated, but still it's very disruptive. It's tearing families apart, disrupting communities. And a key point is that MSDF was never intended to hold people for long periods of time. When it was built in 2001, it was built because of overcrowding in the county jails, because of Wisconsin's unjust revocation policies. Wisconsin's unjust revocation policies created terrible overcrowding in the Milwaukee County jail facilities. And don't want to get too much into the details, but instead, so there was a lawsuit, and the state could no longer incarcerate people in the county jail system after the lawsuit. So instead of ending the abuse of revocation in Wisconsin, the state of Wisconsin decided to waste $60 million to build MSDF. And originally it was just they're supposed to be there just for short periods of time, but now some people are there for 12 months or more. I know Dante just recently spent more than 12 months there. In my case, I spent more than 6 months there. So it's turned into a super maximum security prison, basically. But it was never intended to be that. We just got information from the Department of Corrections regarding racial disparities in MSDF. So every year that MSDF has been open since 2001, the majority of individuals there have been African Americans. And just the most recent data, 2006, at the end of 2016, 66% of people incarcerated at MSDF were black, and 75% of people incarcerated at MSDF at the end of 2016 were people of color. So we're seeing huge racial disparities in incarceration for these minor technical violations. And we already know that Wisconsin incarcerates African American men at a higher rate than any other state except Oklahoma. And previously, Wisconsin was the worst in the country in 2010. And an often overlooked factor in that is crimeless revocations and MSDF. So it's this institution right in downtown Milwaukee that a lot of people are not aware of. this institution is a contributing factor in all that, the racial disparities, and why it's a huge factor in why Wisconsin incarcerates African American men at a higher rate than any other state except Oklahoma. It contributes to the huge incarceration rates that we see in 53206, which has the highest incarceration rate of any zip code in the United States, which is predominantly African American. And we know, yes.
Do people come to MSDF just from Milwaukee or from the whole state?
People come from throughout the whole state. Anybody on supervision in Wisconsin could potentially be sent there, but it's mostly a Milwaukee County issue. Most of the people there are from Milwaukee County, so it's very much a Milwaukee issue, but also a statewide issue, and it's a state prison. And we know that many people there many people at MSDF have disabling physical or mental conditions. I've been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. When I was there, I stayed in a special needs unit, and many people there have addiction problems. So instead of these issues being treated as a public health issue, Wisconsin is needlessly incarcerating people who need treatment, who need help in the community, but instead people are being sent to an institution with inhumane conditions. And also there's a pod that holds 40 women in MSDF, so it's not just men there. So this breaks down more about why people are there. So we have in the 9th floor, there are 200 people on the 9th floor who have been revocated, and they're now in the Division of Adult Institutions, but they're serving less than 12 months. And so they're just there for these short periods of time. It's not necessary for these people, for individuals to be sitting there and very little programming, very little opportunity for rehabilitation, and people are just sitting there in these inhumane conditions for less than 12 months. Then the 7th and 8th floor they hold individuals who are just there for allegedly violating rules of probation, parole, or extended supervision. And some of the individuals have been revocated and they're stuck in MSDF. They're waiting transfer to Dodge Correctional Institution, which is where people go when they enter the state prison system. And so all these individuals are on probation, just there for allegedly violating rules of supervision. Another major issue is that MSDF has 224 beds for what the DOC calls alternative to revocation treatment programs. And we know that rehabilitation is not going to happen in a place like MSDF, where people can't see outside, can't go outside, where there's no access to sunlight, no in-person visits. People are locked down 20 to 23 hours a day. This institution devastates individuals psychologically. I've seen it, I've witnessed it. One man in MSDF attempted to commit suicide while I was there. 2 men in my unit severely mutilated themselves. Several other men had to be put under suicide watch after they became suicidal. I just talked with a young woman whose boyfriend is currently incarcerated at MSDF, and he has a very powerful story. He's a young black man. He has been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, and he recently attempted to commit suicide in MSDF. He told staff members and members of the psychological staff and corrections officers that he was feeling suicidal. They put him back in his cell. They thought that there was nothing wrong with him. The psychiatrist and psychologist said there was nothing wrong with him, put him back in the cell, and he attempted to overdose on pills. And he's been in MSDF for over 7 months, and he's very depressed. It's been a very traumatic experience for him. And his girlfriend is upset, and she reached out to Expo and now wants us to publicize the story and she wants to file a lawsuit, and she wants it to be taken to the media. But this is a common story. It happens frequently. We hear about these types of stories where people who already have mental illnesses are being trapped in this institution, and it's only making individuals worse while they're there and creating unnecessary problems in individuals' lives. And so here's more about the inhumane conditions, which we can get into more. And so the overcrowding is something that I didn't mention. Many people are forced to sleep on the floor in a cell designed for one person when they first come in. The DOC forced me to sleep on the floor in MSDF for several weeks when I first went in there in 2007.
Next to a toilet.
Yeah, next to the toilet, yes. And so you have a bunk for 2 men here in a tiny little cell, then they bring in a boat, which is with a little mattress on the floor, and there's no room to even move in the cell. So you have 3 people, 1 person sleeping on the floor, 2 people in a bunk. and you're stuck there 20 to 23 hours a day, and you only get out to eat, and there's no programming, so people are just sitting there stuck. And we have to remember that none of the people there, very few of the people should even be there because they are just there, they haven't committed new serious crimes, and so it's needless incarceration, and there are fights, self-mutilation, so there are only a couple of phones in each unit, a couple of showers, and so people have very limited day room time, and so there have been fights just over use of phone, and it's a very stressful environment, and people, so violence is another part of what people have to deal with every day, abuse from COs. Recently, there have been articles in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel that showed that COs have abused mentally ill individuals within the facility, and that's just a common everyday part of it. When I was there, corrections officers regularly abused people, mistreated them, didn't treat them as humans, and so that's a regular part of it. No outdoor recreation. Alan can speak more about so we know that when DOC is not giving people access to one door of outdoor recreation, they're in violation of the United Nations document on the minimum standard treatment of prisoners. The United Nations has just released a document, and Alan I know has done some research on that. He might be able to talk more about that. And very poor ventilation. There's no air conditioning in the summer. It can get well over 100 degrees there. And no access to sunlight, like I said before. Never being able to go outside. 17 people have died at MSDF since it opened in 2001.
And that's just what we know.
Yeah, and many of these deaths occurred because individuals' medical or psychiatric conditions were improperly monitored or left untreated. The Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, again, did a very good investigative report on it, which documented a lot of what's gone on in there. Expo leader James Wilborn died in the facility in 2015. So factors in his death were the extreme heat there, and he was also unable to obtain medications that he needed. And James was very active in Expo, and he was very active in organizing around the practice of ending crimeless revocations. But then, unfortunately, DOC forced him to go in there for what he was fighting against, and should have never been there. And and we knew he had a history of serious medical conditions, and the last place you want to ever send somebody who has medical conditions, serious problems, health problems, is MSDF because of the conditions there. And then opportunity costs. So there are different estimates on how much it costs to incarcerate somebody in the Wisconsin State prison system, but one estimate was approximately $50,000. And so Wisconsin keeps MSDF full, keeps it at least 1,040 people there throughout each year. And so when we add all that up, we know that Wisconsin's spending at least $50 million to keep MSDF operating every year. And instead, our argument is that Wisconsin should be using all the money it's wasting on MSDF and instead invest that money into communities. Wisconsin should be using all that money to so we know that if that money was taken out of MSDF and all this needless incarceration was stopped, then we'd have $50 million every year to put into building safer, stronger, and healthier communities in Milwaukee, especially in neighborhoods that have been most disproportionately harmed by mass incarceration and racism. And here's what I was talking about earlier. Expo and Wisdom recently partnered with an organization called Human Impact Partners in Oakland to do a health impact assessment about the consequences of excessive revocations in Wisconsin. And I mentioned this earlier, I can repeat it again, that Wisconsin incarcerated 3,000 individuals for crimeless revocations in 2015 alone. People were sent back for an average of 18 months. So now we know that, and many of these people were incarcerated at MSDF. MSDF is a major factor in this because all the people there are there for violating rules of supervision initially. And we know that 4,500 individuals are in the Wisconsin State prison system now who are there only for a revocation and not for a new conviction. And so if Wisconsin stopped reincarcerating people for crimeless revocations, then Wisconsin could close down MSDF and the state's two largest prisons. And that's very important to remember. That's a key policy area, a key policy change. And other states have started doing that throughout the country. Red and blue states throughout the country are scaling back on that and greatly reducing the use of incarceration for revocations that don't involve new crimes. And states, in many cases, have been able to close down prisons and reinvest money into programs that are needed. And here, like I said, thousands of other people are cycling in and out of the system who do not get revocated, which is possibly even a bigger problem than crimeless revocation. So people are going in for 1 week, 2 weeks, can constantly be going cycling in and out of the system just on allegations in many cases. Anytime a call is made, anytime a person can just be snatched off the streets and taken to MSDF while the agents will investigate. And so many times the allegations might not even be true, or it just might be a minor allegation, minor infraction. Like I was saying, some of the examples were unauthorized computer use, missing appointments, crossing county lines, entering bars, borrowing money. And people in Wisconsin who are on supervision are being incarcerated for things that many people do every day and take for granted. But when people are on supervision, it's very stressful and can get sent back for anything. And then if you want to read the full report about the consequences of excessive revocations in Wisconsin, you can go to sentback.org. You can get the full report, executive summaries on there too, and an infographic. Has information about racial disparities. We know that although only 6% of Wisconsinites identify as being African American, 40% of people who are being sent back for crimeless revocations are African American. So there's huge racial disparities. There's a huge racial justice component to revocations in MSDF, and so definitely want to lift that up. And here we've been challenged by a lot of groups saying that this closing MSDF is realistic and it can never happen, and been challenged in many different ways. So we started to put together a blueprint for closing MSDF just to start a conversation about some ways. There are many different ways that it can be done to get the decarceration that we need to make that happen. But one, obviously, like I've been saying, I mentioned twice already, is simply stopping the practice of reincarcerating individuals who have allegedly violated rules of supervision that don't involve new crimes. So taking those 4,500 people out of the system, out of the state prison system, that's one obvious way, and that's a huge policy area. And then the second one is that immediately DOC in Wisconsin should shift the 224 beds for treatment and alternative programs in MSDF and move those programs to the community so they could become community-based programs. And that's 224 individuals right away, which is just common sense that people are going to do better when a community-based setting, and a person's not going to be rehabilitated in these inhumane conditions within MSDF, and so that's just common sense. And then we can increase the use of community-based alternatives to incarcerating people at MSDF. So there are many community-based alternatives that have been proven to work throughout the country. A lot of evidence that shows that treatment alternatives are cheaper, more cost-effective, and they reduce recidivism rates and incarceration rates. So definitely need to start using those and investing more in those. And then the last part is one major factor. Some people might not know that in 2014, Wisdom created a blueprint for ending mass incarceration in Wisconsin, which included 3 main policy changes. One would be to increase funding for the state's treatment alternatives and diversion program, the TAD program, which all the evidence on it, it's already up and going, and all the evidence shows that this program reduces recidivism rates, reduces incarceration rates, and saves taxpayers money. But unfortunately, the Wisconsin legislators are not making adequate investments in this, and they're not investing in areas of greatest need. So often there will be an increase in funding, but the money never comes to Milwaukee, Madison, urban areas that have the greatest need. So we have to make sure that it's racially equitable when we're increasing funding. And that program could divert thousands of people out of the system every year. And then another piece of that was ending crimeless revocation, which I've already mentioned many times. We can keep thousands more out of the system by stopping the practice of crimeless revocation, and then giving people a fair chance to be released on parole. There are almost 3,000 people stuck in the system now who were sentenced under the old law in Wisconsin before Wisconsin went to truth in sentencing. And unfortunately, Governor Walker and people who oversee the parole process in Wisconsin have almost brought this process to a halt and stopped it, and people are not being given a fair chance. And so just by those 3 policy changes, Wisconsin could safely cut its prison population in half. And we know by the comparison with Minnesota that it's possible. Minnesota and Wisconsin have similar populations, similar different demographics, or similar in many ways. But Wisconsin incarcerates at twice the rate of Minnesota and spends more than twice as much on corrections. And crime rates have stayed the same in both states over the last 30 years, but Wisconsin has consistently incarcerated at twice the rate of Minnesota. And then also another piece of it is reducing unnecessary incarceration in the Milwaukee County jail system. There's a lot that goes into that. There have been studies showing, that a recent report came out showing that Milwaukee County incarcerates many people for fairly long periods of time for minor misdemeanors that have little to do with public safety. And just through practice like bail reform, there are many people stuck in the county system there for just because can't afford $250 bail or $500 bail, but pose no threat to the public at all. And so just ending the system of cash bail or greatly reforming it could keep many people out of the county system. And then we can increase the use of deferred prosecution agreements and pretrial diversion programs. And so for people who say, where are you going to put all the people at MSDF? First of all, we have to understand most of those people should not be there. But if Wisconsin does decide to incarcerate, there's still the county, this expansive, huge county system that Milwaukee County has, that instead of having this high-rise torture chamber, let's at least consider using that as an alternative in some cases. And so there's a lot of decarceration that can happen there. And then here's our information. You can check out our website at wisdomwisconsin.org. Expo's on Facebook at Expo Wisconsin. We're on Twitter at Expo Wisconsin. And we also have a radio program every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. on River West Radio. You can go on riverwestradio.com and check out the program anytime. And also, if you want to get more involved, email us at exprogroupwi@gmail.com. So I'll just leave that up there. I'll open it up. I'll give Alan a chance to introduce himself.
I'm Alan Schultz, state board member with Ex-Prisoners Organizing. I've also experienced MSDF, not for a lot of the same extended periods as some of my friends have. I was only there for about a half a month, but I was in there not on crimeless revocation. I was in there for awaiting transfer to Dodge Correctional Institute. And when I was in there, they confined us sometimes over the 23-hour lockdown in there when you're waiting transfer. And the staff members in there tend to actually treat those that are awaiting transfer a lot worse than they do most of the regular people that are housed there, because they're not really going to be remaining there. So they're kind of like, this is somebody that we don't really care about. We can wash our hands with them because they're not going to be staying here very long, and they're going to be moving to another facility. All it really takes there is to get on the nerves of one correctional officer, and they can do a lot of similar things like they've done at county jail, which we've heard with like the Terrell Thomas thing where they turned off the water to his cell. They did that same thing to me and one of my cellmates when I was in there awaiting the transfer. They turned off our water for like 48 hours in our cell because of an argument with the correctional officer and my cellmate. And it's just exacerbating to our mental health issues. Well, I'll stick with the water. The water is terrible. When they turn that off, we don't have a bubbler in our room anymore because there's like a faucet with a toilet, and it's all connected. And when that happens and they turn it off, you no longer have any water whatsoever in your cell. you can only flush your toilet like one time, and then that's it. There's no more water to flush anything. So that's 48 hours of people going through using the bathroom, and you can't flush anything. Then on top of it, you have those extended, like you were saying with the United Nations standard minimum requirements for treatment of prisoners. I would honestly say they're in violation of, there's like about, I think like 105 rules on that, and they're in violation of, or at least skirting violation or in complete violation of about 19 of those rules, which that's also deemed the Nelson Mandela rules. They've been out since 2015, the UN came out with that. I've had numerous friends in there. I have another friend that, like we said, a lot of people come from across the state. It's just predominantly Milwaukee is the people that are housed there. But I had a friend that is Native American that was housed there as well. And that's actually in direct violation of his religious and spiritual, his ability to have access to religious and spiritual needs, because for somebody that is Native American, a lot of them require having sweat lodge or having access to outside, and there is no access to outside whatsoever. So that's actually like violating his constitutional right to practice his beliefs. Then on top of it, you have, like we said, with the triple bunking, you had just took a tour there, Mark. You said there was, what, 1,200 and some in there when you had went. So actually, when you're saying, Len, there's overcrowding in there and there's 200 and some people, let's factor that in, that those people are being triple bunked. So that's actually affecting the mental health of probably roughly 600 people, not just those initial 200. It's affecting 600 out of whatever the 1,040 or 1,200 in there, because you're now triple bunking people, leaving them in there for 20 to 23 hours. And when you have that many people in such a small confined space, it's even worse than a standard solitary confinement. These are people that might have conflicting beliefs. These are, it doesn't take much, especially when you're housed for that long and that constantly, and some people are in there for months, years, and you just keep continuously doing that, and it grates on the person, and it causes a lot of the violence you see. Or you would hear about from in there, or the conditions that create people wanting to possibly commit suicide. It honestly isn't rehabilitative at all. Even if they're giving you programming, and sometimes like it takes them months before you even get in a program. So I don't know if Dante wants to speak on his experiences.
Yeah, my name is Dante Pyro. A lot of people say, thank you. A lot of people say Parrow. I just wanted to touch on a lot of the mental issues there. If you don't have a problem, you will. You come there with so much of your senses, and then by the time you leave, you're on medication for some illness. The treatment there is not fair. You know. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm usually talking to just one person. We got a crowd of people. Plus, I'm not a public speaker, so bear with me. You got overcrowding thing, which is madness in itself. The only thing that you really have to ground you is God, or your belief in whatever, to help you through those times. Because mind you, now we have a wreck and stuff like that, but you inside, you don't get no outside. You know, you inside a building, no sunlight, no birds, trees, no trees or anything like that. So that does something to you. Just imagine you in a dark room, you know, with nothing, and you just stay there, you sit there, and then somebody lets you out into a bigger room. You know what I mean? So that's not good for a person. Things have been set up in MSDF for alternative revocation, but they're not using it. It's also a category system that the governor set in place, but the law judges are not using it. They don't care. My experience is similar to some of these guys, these two guys here. I don't want to, expound on that too much. It's a bad place. You already got enough information already on that, but I just want to touch on the mental things. They feed you medicine all day, put you to sleep, so you won't have to deal with them. They don't have to deal with you, and it's a lot of angry people there for crime or violation, rule violations. It's not even a crime. Nobody didn't commit no crimes. Now, granted, you get certain many years in Wisconsin penal system. Say you get 5 years, they give you 3 years out on probation, but you still considered part of the penal system. So you can go back anytime. So they try all these little tricks to get you back into the system. MSDF is a place that was only supposed to hold you for 90 days, and that's it. To get to another alternative to going back to prison. Now they made the place a prison. It is now, it was DCC, Department of Community Corrections. Now it's Department of Adult Institutions now as well. And they using different things like to say, okay, well, we don't have room in other prisons, so you gonna have to stay here. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to also add a couple things that you guys haven't brought up too. First of all, this is a medium security prison, and it's running as maximum level, if I'm correct.
Supermax.
So, okay, a supermax. And
yes.
Also, I have looked into, there's actually no fire standards there. There's no fire drills. If there was a fire there, from my understanding, they're to lock the prisoners into their cells during a fire. There's no fire procedures. There's no sprinkler system. Yeah, they would just go locked into their cells. I'm not understanding what, how that standard could even exist. And then the other thing, I wanted to put more emphasis also on what he was saying about the boats. The idea of somebody being in a cell that's the size of a bathroom with 3 people and one person sleeping on the floor next to the toilet when, as he said, sometimes they cut off the water so they can't even flush the toilet properly. So there's feces and urine sitting in these toilets for days at a time, and men or women are sleeping on the floor next to the toilet. Those are the type of inhumane conditions that are going on. Sorry, I have a lot of stuff, and also I think these prisoners are not supposed to be there more than 12 months. Am I correct about
90
that?
days.
Okay, and my husband's actually been there for 18 months now. And on he was revocated. He did not, as they said, he did not commit any new crime to go back to prison. He was revocated for a simple parole violation. And what they like to do, as they said, if you miss your appointment, if a person has a job and their parole officer says, okay, I need you here at 9 o'clock. Now, you're a man trying to support your family. You have a family to support, and the PO says, okay, you have to be here at 9 o'clock and you have to weigh out your options. Okay, I just got out of incarceration and I was able to get a job. So either I can go to work or I can be in parole violation and possibly lose my job or else go back to prison. Like that, those are the type of choices that these men actually have. And it's just, to me, it's crazy. And then we're taking them away from the children. And I work in Head Start, so I'm a Head Start teacher, and I'm watching this happen to my children's families. So this is not only affecting the adults, it's affecting the children too. So then the fathers are taken away, you know, from the children, or the mothers are taken away for no crime. No crime was committed. It was because they couldn't make their appointment on time, or you know, as he said, sometimes driving, or things like that. I'm sorry, I just have so much opinion about all this, because I just can't believe that they can legally put these people into these little itty bitty cells, and it's over like 100 and something degrees in these rooms. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd also like to state too, with regards to the crimeless revocations, it's not just crimeless revocations. A lot of times it's just allegations that also put people in there. So, I mean, anybody can just say something to a PO basically, and the PO just assumes that that person is correct, instead of doing and conducting the investigation while that person is still outside of a correctional facility. They place them in there, disrupt their whole entire life, so that they then lose their job. They don't have that contact with their children, which that was also another aspect of why they built the facility too. It was supposed to be for rehabilitation, but it was also supposed to be so that a lot of the people in the Milwaukee community could be able to visit their loved ones while they're in. And it's a farce, really, because all of that is done on video monitoring in there, when the rest of the prison system that we have here is not done on video monitoring. Everybody gets to have like a contact visit where you get to hug your loved one and to be with your children. And as you were stating with children too, we just recently met a young man too that said that his father's been in and out of there, and he can actually document that his grades were dropping as soon as like his father went in, and he doesn't even have the best relationship with his father. But you'd be surprised at how just that little bit of time with a biological father or a father figure basically can impact a child.
Sure. I wasn't at MSDF, but I was in a segregation unit for 3 months. And one of the things that was the hardest for me was the noise. You didn't mention the noise. There are a lot of people with mental health issues, and they're screaming and they're banging on their cell doors, and they're making noise through the night. So you can't sleep. It's very, very hard, and that really wears you down too in terms of your own mental health and your own ability to cope. So on top of everything else you've heard, think about what it would be like to just have constant noise, and especially at night, that would keep you from being able to sleep.
I was wondering if there were any alliances with correctional officers or anyone else, since it would be appalling also to have to work in that kind of facility. So I'm just wondering, is Expo or any organizations being able to develop alliances for being able to reform or abolish prisons?
Yeah, Wisdom's president is a former corrections officer, Reverend Willie Briscoe. Many of you probably know him. He worked in the system for many years, and now he's one of the most vocal advocates speaking out against the system and letting people know what it is and why some prisons should be abolished and why there's such a need for reform. And Floyd Mitchell, the former warden of MSDF, called MSDF the worst prison in the United States on the Earl Ingram show, came out and said it. And he agrees with a lot of what we were saying about the need to reduce the prison population. Myself, I was on the Earl Ingram show on 1510 AM along with a couple of other Expo leaders, and we had a chance to speak with Floyd Mitchell, the former warden of MSDF, and the conversation went well. There's a lot of areas for agreement that we can start to build on. But we also realize that unions have an interest, and in some cases, unions have been a key player in expanding unnecessary incarceration in states like California, some states that have very powerful unions, and many times they'll work against our interests. And so I think it would be a difficult alliance to build, but definitely, and corrections officers will support some changes like early release, giving people a chance to get some time reduced for participating in rehabilitation programs, because truth in sentencing took that away and made prisons even more dangerous than before, because people have no incentives in there. There's a set date, there's a date, and there's no opportunity to get that date changed. With the parole system, they had the opportunity. There was that, so if a person was participating in educational programs and different rehabilitation programs, behaving well, then a person could be released sometimes years early, and that was all taken away. And so that's a common sense approach, common sense reform that corrections officers would likely support. So there's some common ground, some areas for common ground, and other areas there might not be, but definitely we could be willing to work with them if they want to support some common sense changes that will reduce the prison population.
Could you guys address the role that our elected officials have played in this process? Have you gotten any support from elected officials around the state at all?
Yes, there's been some support from Milwaukee area legislators. In the last legislative session, when LaTanya Johnson was a state legislator, she's now a state senator. So LaTanya Johnson introduced a bill that would have placed a cap on the number of people who can be sent back to prison for crimeless revocations in Wisconsin. Unfortunately, Republicans opposed it. It never came up for a vote. State Representative Evan Goyke has been doing a lot of work in this area. We've also had support from state legislators like Mandela Barnes when he was represented here. State Representative David Bowen has been supportive. Brostoff. State Senator Lena Taylor is supporting. So, and we expect State Senator, we expect State Senator Lena Taylor to introduce a bill that would place a cap on the time that people can be incarcerated for revocations, and we expect State Senator LaTanya Johnson to continue her efforts. But at some point, we've got to get some bipartisan support around that. And there was a bill passed in 2014 that was part of the HOPE package of bills. There was a bill within that was, they called the Swift and Certain Sanctions Law, that required the Department of Corrections to implement a new system of short-term community-based sanctions or responses to rule violations. And we've heard some feedback from Neil Thorson, the Chief of Community Corrections here, Region 3 in Milwaukee, that they have started to implement that, but unfortunately it took 2 years and we're not even sure at this point, so there's very little transparency of the project or the implementation of that bill. We need more community oversight and more transparency in that the process of these bills actually being implemented properly as intended by the legislature. And then, so just in short, Milwaukee area legislators have been supportive of ending unnecessary incarceration for crimeless revocations, but we have to get statewide support at some point to get these passed and pushed through.
We have Milwaukee County Supervisor Peggy West, and she wants to make a statement.
Thank you. I'm actually just here as just a member of the public. My daughter's father's currently in MSDF, unfortunately, and I spoke with him this afternoon and told him I was coming, and he gave me a list of things that he wanted for me to make sure that everybody heard, and a couple of them have been addressed. So first of all, he said it's the only institution in the state without contact visits for general population inmates, and that it's the only institution in the state where general population cannot see outside, cannot go outside. And I don't know if people that are listening to this could really put your mind around that. When he calls, he has to ask, how is it outside? He doesn't know. He has no concept of what's going on outside, whether it's raining or whether it's sunny, and it's terrible for a human being to have to, not be exposed to fresh air. the next one is general population, DIA, mixed with DCC. So DCC is Department of Corrections. Those are people that have Department of Community Corrections, so people who have not been revoked yet, maybe going through the process, maybe being considered for an ATR. Those inmates are mixed with the DAIs, who are people who have actually been revocated. So why does this matter? Well, it matters for a couple of reasons. The first reason is because if I am a DAI, I have nothing to lose. And so when you talk about fighting and being troublesome or whatever, if I'm in the cell with someone who is a DCC and I'm a DAI, as a DCC, I do have something to lose because you're talking about crimeless revocation. But if I catch, a case, or if I fight, or if I get caught up in something while I'm in MSDF, I'm going to be in trouble. And it's something that they're going to take a look at when it comes to what they should do with me. So that's one issue. But then the other issue is that as a DAI, you have more. I don't know if you want to say rights, but you have more privileges. Thank you. You have more privileges. So I can own a TV, I can own a radio, I can, I can own a TV and I can own a radio. And so as a DCC, you can't. And so if I'm in the cell or on the same floor with those individuals, I'm not able to have those things, which means I spend the better part of 21 hours of a day in my cell. And yes, you can read books, but that means you have to have someone from the outside send you books. Okay, so I've attempted now probably 6 times to send books, and because they don't get sent with a receipt, even though they clearly say on the envelope that they're from Amazon.com, he can't have them. So then he has the choice to spend his commissary money to send them back to me so that I can return them, or they get destroyed. So I've literally lost probably close to $60 on books that he can't have. Not because they're not, anything that's not on the reading list or whatnot, but just because they don't have a receipt with them. And then the other one that he has is the DAI and DCC mixed on the 8th floor. For 3 hours out of, they get 3 hours out of their room per day. So they get 3 hours of day room per day. The most, at the most, and then in their cells for 21 hours. No TV, no radio, because DCCs can't have them. So and then his last thing is that it simulates segregation. The entire building simulates segregation. It's like being in segregation. It's a building inside of a building. When it's hot outside, it is like 3 times as hot inside as it is outside. And even if you go to visit, it's hot in the visiting room. So you can imagine up on the upper floors how hot it is as heat rises. And so, again, with all of these different alternatives, as a legislator, I think the best way to try to get Republicans on board with making these changes is to show them the figures. And I see Father Joe Elwinger here, and he's constantly in front of us at the county board, and he has pushed through some measures for us that maybe for some people were a hard sell, but he's been able to say, these items make sense. These items, will save money in the long run. And really, at the end of the day, it should be about the bottom line. If you can treat people better, and we're doing that now with our juveniles in Milwaukee County. We want them to be close to home. We're able to provide them with better services. We're able to provide that family stability. And we're able to acclimate them to their own communities, which is the most important part. And that's the same thing that goes with these individuals. Yeah, it's great that they built MSDF in Milwaukee, but there's so many different parts of that are lacking. And I just want to have one comment more, and that is regarding AOTA and addiction. And the state of Wisconsin and the Department of Community Corrections has got to change the way that they are looking at addiction and AOTA, or it's going to continue to cost the taxpayers in Milwaukee County, or the state of Wisconsin, millions and millions of dollars a year in incarceration. If you don't help people that are suffering from addiction, there's no way that you can expect for them to get better. And when I say help them, I don't mean that you're going to do an 18-week program at the bridge and then they're gonna recover, like actual recovery. And for some people, just their guidelines that they have for their probation makes it impossible for them to have the recovery that they need. And so they have to change, they have to wake up and realize that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Reverend Elwinger?
As somebody who's made a lot of visits at MSDF, I can say that the testimonies that we've heard here this evening are not exaggerated. This is, as a pastor or clergy would say, the gospel truth. It is the way it is, and it is inhumane. It is contrary to UN standards. It is contrary to what almost everybody in this state would say is the humane way to treat anybody, even somebody who has committed a crime. I would just add a couple of things. One, that the Department of Corrections will, if you look it up on whatever places there are on the website, you will probably see their claim that they are reducing revocations. And the story behind that is that they are giving what they call alternatives to revocation. But what are their alternatives to revocation? Now, Mark pointed this out, but it was buried there. Let me bring it up. An alternative to revocation, even taking AODA problems seriously, DOC would say, oh yeah, we recognize that people who have problems with addiction need to get treatment, and so that's why we have these programs in the MSDF. So what really happens, and this has happened to any number of persons that I visited, they get sent there, they spend maybe 60, 90 days before it's finally determined whether they're going to be revoked or what's going to happen to them. So then they're told after 90 days that, well, you need a treatment program, and lucky you, we have a treatment program here at MSDF, but it's not ready to go. You won't be able to get into it for another 3 months. So they wait around for another 3 months, that's 6 months. They are then in the program for maybe 3 months, and so they've been there 9 months, and it's been proven that any treatment program inside the system is half as effective as a treatment program in the community for many good reasons, as you can probably figure out. So, the DOC is salving its conscience by but keeping people in the system. And to say that we're reducing revocations and sending people to alternatives to revocation, but keeping them in at MSDF for 9, 12, and 15 months is worse than a revocation to a regular prison, because it is the supermax that you described. And be sure, before we leave here this evening, that I'm sure you probably have this in mind, Mark and company, but be sure to tell them about the action that is planned at the end of this month.
Yes. The launch event for the Close MSDF campaign will be on Thursday, June 29th at Milwaukee Area Technical College, room M605.
M605?
Yeah, M605. It starts at 5 p.m. That's Thursday, June 29th. It will start there at the downtown campus of MATC on State Street. It'll start out with the premiere of Tim Kerson's documentary on MSDF. Tim Kerson's an independent producer. He's made several short films for Wisdom's campaign on different aspects of the penal system. We're currently working with him. He's got some powerful testimonies from people who've been incarcerated at MSDF and currently in the process of putting together the final version of that. It'll be out soon. The premiere, like I said, is 29th. Then we're gonna have another short panel discussion, have some Expo leaders respond to that. And then we've got Janos Martin coming from a group called Just Leadership USA in New York City. Just Leadership USA in New York City led a campaign that called the Close Rikers campaign, and they got a commitment from New York City Mayor de Blasio to close Rikers in less than a year. And so it's a very powerful and inspiring campaign. It shows that local organizing can make a difference, even in the era of Trump and the difficult federal environment. State and local organizing is still very important. After that, at 6 p.m., we expect around 200 people there. We're going to be marching to Milwaukee Secure Detention Facility, which is a few blocks away from MATC. We're going to have a prayer vigil for all the individuals who died in MSDF since it opened in 2001. Then we're going to have a rally and very short press conference. We're going to have all our coalition partners there. We've got a strong coalition of organizations that support Close MSDF now. Coalition includes Wisdom, Expo, MICA, Rid Racism Milwaukee, NAACP Milwaukee, ULAC, IWW Milwaukee, IWOC, which is Incarcerated Workers Organizing Committee, Pink and Black Milwaukee, Table of the Saints. Did I miss any, Ellen? But it's, I think, yeah, so that's to name some of them. And Just Leadership USA is providing national support. We've got Khalil Cumberbatch is coming out as well. He's the manager of trainings at Just Leadership USA. I'm one of their leading, they have a program, a national program for formerly incarcerated leaders. It's a training program, leadership development program called Leading with Conviction. I'm in the program right now, and they've trained over 200 formerly incarcerated leaders across the country. Khalil Cumberbatch is going to be coming here as a very powerful story. We have the Expo Wisconsin banquet the following night. It's Friday, June 30th. That will be start at 5:30 p.m. at Ascension Lutheran Church on the south side near 27th and Greenfield. So please, tickets are $50 for that, and we'll have Khalil from Just Leadership USA. But at the action, Janos is going to be speaking about the tactics and strategies that were successful in New York City. And so, in the banquet, we have a short awards ceremony. We have a session on women in incarceration, and a keynote and dinner will be included. And Expo has a week-long training that week as well at UW Parkside, so a lot of activities going on for Expo. It's our first national training program. We have a leadership development program for formerly incarcerated people and people who have been affected by the penal system. And we're part of the Gamaliel Network, which is a nationwide network, and Wisdom is Gamaliel in Wisconsin. Gamaliel is a nationwide network of faith-based organizations that work on social justice issues. Gamaliel is in 17 different states, and so we have formerly incarcerated leaders from all over the country come in to support our actions and our training. They'll be participating in the training, so those are some of the events, but please come out on Thursday and support us. We have flyers, and we also have a petition that's calling on Governor Walker to close down MSDF, so please sign the petition. It's available online as well. You can find it at our website.
And we also have, every month we've been, probably since maybe February, we've been conducting information pickets outside of the Milwaukee County Courthouse or the Milwaukee Secure Detention Facility when it's like Saturday or a Sunday that the 23rd falls on. And this is in conjunction with National Religious Coalition Against Torture, which is, it's being hosted on the 23rd of every month because it's against 23-hour confinement, lockdown, solitary confinement. So we've been using that as kind of like a piggyback issue. And we continue, we got one coming up on the 23rd, which is, I believe, a Friday this month, and we'll be outside of the county courthouse from about 11:30 to 1:30. getting more signatures for the petition, educating people that are coming in and out, and also trying to find more people that have similar stories to what we've been through, because a lot of the people that are going in and out of the courthouse are dealing with the same things that we've all dealt with. I think we may have another one earlier this month, only because we're also dealing with our event at the end of the month, so we want to get the word out more on that too.
Any other questions, comments?
Does anyone know if like or MSDF or DOC have been prosecuted for not following like United Nations guidelines or like just humane guidelines overall?
We're low budget here. As far as I know, no, they haven't been having any suits against them on that. There's been a couple suits from people whose family members have perished in there. As far as I know, nothing's really gotten any traction and gone through.
The other thing I wanted to say also is, I don't know, they just started this thing where 50% of what you send an inmate is actually taken from the inmates and put towards their supervision fee. So if I send my husband $20, $10 of that is taken from him and put towards his supervision fee, instead of allowing him to pay that when he can get a job and be able to support himself. That comes out of my pocket when I'm trying to help him be able to survive with deodorant, toothpaste, and things like that. And I don't think any other prison does that.
No, they're all doing that. That's a statewide thing.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay, it just started. I've never heard of that.
It's like
wow.
Act, I believe it's Act 383 or 333.
355.
Okay, yeah, Act 355, and it's actually even worse. Sometimes it's up to 60%.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, so it can be either like 50% or 60%, depending on what the stipulations are for that particular prisoner.
I have a question.
Well, I looked at Act 355. It has nothing to do with it. They also got 841 point something. It doesn't deal with whatever they're trying to do. So it's just like they just made it up. It's not an act. It's not a statute. It don't exist. So they just basically they said what this what this act says, but when you look it up, it has nothing to do with raising the 25% to 50%. Plus, they take 10% for the release account. So you know you can't even. So it's 60%, sometimes 70, 80%. So you're only getting 20% of the money.
Can I ask a question here? Maybe I sound extremely idealistic. It's just hard to imagine this kind of thing without national attention. Without national attention, nothing seems to ever change. It has to come out of Milwaukee for the nation to see this is how people are being treated. And coming from Kansas, I found that Dr. Carl Menninger, a long time ago psychologist, changed a number of methods in the criminal justice system and the penal system there. This disconnect, this creates less than humans, this confinement without the reality of daylight and seasonal changes. Change that from a light piece of glass at the top of a cell to an oblong piece of glass. It was no wider than perhaps your hand. But the thing was, you could see outside the people could see the seasons change, the sunrise and sunset, and so on. So I'm just, this is devastating to think that this goes on and the powerlessness of it, and nobody knows this is happening. I know that this most recent review of the state of Black Americans, Milwaukee made it to the front of the line for the second time as worst in the nation. And I suppose being a product of the civil rights movement, it's like you really realize that people don't know how bad it is. I believe in the inherent good of humanity, that this would not be allowed and continued if people are aware of what's happening here. This is, I mean, it's very depressing. Now, I mean, the powerlessness of it, and to just know that it just goes on, and we meet and we talk, and on the other hand, people's lives are being lost while we're talking about it. Oh, I'm sorry. What can we do, in other words?
Yes, you brought up a good point about the importance of national attention. And we believe that partnering with organizations that are doing this on a national scale is important. That's why we've partnered with organizations like Just Leadership USA. Just Leadership USA is helping to amplify the message of Expo. We're also a part of the Gamelio Network, which is a nationwide network, which also helps to amplify our voices at a national level. Expo is also a part of the formerly incarcerated convicted people and families movement, which is a nationwide movement. Several Expo leaders participated in a national conference in Oakland, California. Over 500 formerly incarcerated leaders from more than 35 states attended that last year, and that's important. So it's important to build a nationwide movement, and we're starting to do that, and it's important to get involved in organizing, first of all, and that's what Expo is all about. We're about building powerful organizations, building power, and there's strength in numbers. The more people that get involved and are out here organizing, the more change that we can make. Expo is going to be rolling out an integrated voter engagement plan. We're going to be doing a lot of canvassing. That's one way to get involved. So there are many different ways to get involved and to start to make a difference. You can come to the MICA Rock, Wisconsin Task Force meeting, which meets on the second Wednesday of each month at 5 p.m. at the Project Return office, which is Milwaukee Enterprise Center, again, 2821 North 4th Street, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53212. That's room 312 right now. That's just one way to get involved with the Rock Wisconsin campaign. Invite Expo to do a presentation at your organizations. Reach out and just get involved. There's so many different ways to get involved, and you can always email us at expogroupwi@gmail.com, and we can definitely connect people with different skill sets, whatever skill set, whatever talents you bring. There's some way to plug in and get involved in the movement, whether it's public speaking, writing, graphic design, web development. There's so many different ways. We're always looking for people who want to help out and get involved in this movement and organizing. And coming out at the action will be the first step for people who are thinking about it. Come out and support the Close MSDF action June 29th. This is Thursday, June 29th, 5 p.m. at MATC, room M605. We need your support. When they see a couple hundred people out there, that's going to be the start of this. It's going to show that people are concerned, and people, I've never seen that many people out there. So I mean, we need that to start having a presence out there and to start being disruptive and let people know about this and start to raise awareness of it.
And we've been trying really hard to get that national attention. We've even been trying just on like the state level. We recently had a Wisdom Madison Action Day, and we turned in over 1,000 plus petitions to Governor Walker's office. So it's not like his office is unaware of what's going on, but they're not saying anything about it. Then you also mentioned that we had Vice News was looking into possibly doing a story with us, which that would bring it into like an international sphere. Also, Black and Pink Milwaukee and Milwaukee IWW's Incarcerated Workers Organizing Committee are both part of national movements, but they're part of like prison abolition movements. So this fits right with them on closing a prison.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? All right. Please, we're coming down to the end, so I'd like to acknowledge, please help me acknowledge and June 29th is a press conference? Yep.
The action and press conference?
Yes, yes. So please attend that. If you want more information, look at our website, Rid Racism Milwaukee. We also have a great events calendar on our website. And please, we follow over 100 organizations, racial justice organizations, and their programs and events. And if you want to find an event on a weekend or next week or whatever, it's a wonderful place to go. Also, if you're scheduling an event, you don't want to schedule when another great event is there. So you could use that for scheduling your event. So please, use that website, use that calendar.
Facebook.
And Facebook, I'm sorry, Facebook page, Rid Racism Milwaukee. Our website, ridracism-mke.org. So, once again, thank you, and good evening.
An MCM production.